April 10, 1943. A cable arrived at Allied Forces headquarters in North Africa addressed to General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The message was from British Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery. It read, "Personal Montgomery to Eisenhower. Entered SVAC 8:30 this morning. Please send Fortress." Eisenhower stared at the cable. Bedell Smith, his chief of staff, read it over his shoulder. What Fortress? Neither man could remember agreeing to give Montgomery an American bomber, but Montgomery clearly remembered something they didn't, and he wasn't going to let them forget. In early February 1943, Major General Walter Bedell Smith had visited Montgomery's headquarters in Tripoli. Smith was Eisenhower's chief of staff, the man who handled the details while Eisenhower handled strategy. During the meeting, Montgomery made a request. He wanted a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress for his personal transport. Smith thought it was absurd. B-7 South were strategic bombers. Every one of them was needed for the air campaign against Germany. Giving one to a British general as a personal taxi was ridiculous. So Smith made what he thought was a joke. If Montgomery could capture the Tunisian city of Saxes by April 15th, he said he could have his fortress. Smith meant it as sarcasm. Montgomery took it as a contract. To understand why Montgomery took a joke seriously, you have to understand Montgomery. Bernard Law Montgomery didn't smoke. He didn't drink. He didn't chase women. But he loved to gamble. No wager was too trivial. Montgomery bet on everything, and he never forgot a bet, especially one he could win. Montgomery was also obsessed with one-upmanship. He competed with every general around him for glory, recognition, and status. A personal B-17 would be the ultimate trophy. No other British general had one. Most American generals didn't have one. Montgomery wanted to be the exception. Smith had made a terrible mistake. He'd offered a gambling addict a prize worth winning. The North African campaign was grinding toward its conclusion in spring 1943. Montgomery's 8th Army was pushing west from Libya. American forces under Patton and others were pushing east from Algeria. The goal was to trap the German and Italian forces in Tunisia. Sfax was a key port city on the Tunisian coast. Capturing it would cut German supply lines and accelerate the Allied victory. Montgomery didn't need extra motivation to take Sfaxes. It was already his objective. But now he had a personal incentive. His soldiers were fighting for a strategic port. Montgomery was also fighting for a prize. He pushed his forces hard. April 15th was the deadline. Montgomery intended to beat it. On April 10, 1943, Montgomery's forces entered Sfax at 8:30 in the morning, 5 days ahead of schedule. Montgomery didn't pause to celebrate the victory. He didn't inspect the captured port or address his troops. Before the dust of the final artillery barrage had settled, he sent his demand to Eisenhower. Montgomery had won his bet. Now he wanted his prize immediately. Within minutes, the confusion turned to rage. Smith was in full damage control, frantically arguing that no sane officer would take a throwaway, sarcastic comment as a binding military contract. Eisenhower felt trapped. B-7 South were desperately needed for the bombing campaign. Giving one to Montgomery as a personal aircraft was militarily indefensible. Montgomery was relentless. He treated the sarcastic quip like a signed treaty, flooding headquarters with follow-up messages demanding the Americans honor their word. Eisenhower faced a choice: refuse and create a diplomatic incident, or give Montgomery his prize and accept the humiliation. Eisenhower understood the political reality. If he refused Montgomery, Montgomery would complain to Churchill. Churchill would complain to Roosevelt. Roosevelt would complain to Eisenhower. The argument would consume weeks of diplomatic energy. It would damage Anglo-American relations at a critical moment. It would make Eisenhower look petty for refusing to honor his chief of staff's word. Montgomery had calculated all of this. He knew Eisenhower couldn't afford a public fight over a bomber. So Eisenhower swallowed his anger and gave the order.